It's Monday, December 1st, 2008, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers, and welcome back to the beginning of another week here at the NORML Daily Audio Stash. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving weekend. I went up to the coast, up to Astoria, Oregon, and visited with Cannabis Carrie and her boyfriend. Had a good time out on the beach, throwing a ball for a dog, and enjoying some great Thanksgiving treats. Love that pecan pie. For today's audio stash, we have got an international flavor for you. We're going to go out to Switzerland and speak with P.J. Wasserman about the recent vote in the Swiss Parliament to make permanent a heroin maintenance program for heroin addicts, while at the same time the public voted down cannabis decriminalization. Quite an interesting situation, and we'll talk to PJ about that in today's stash. Also in today's stash, we're going to be speaking with Brendan Rivard, who's the president of NORML UCF. That's the University of Central Florida's chapter of NORML, and they have a vote that's coming up tomorrow in their student assembly regarding a cannabis alcohol equalization measure. Then we've got our regular hemp headlines for you, including a story local to me here about a billboard comparing marijuana and methamphetamine from an anti-drug coalition funded by your tax dollars. Check that out in our hemp headlines. And for our regular musical break, my own brother, less than Radical Josh, your regular tune meister here at the Daily Audio Stash, has one of his own songs for the holiday season. Okay, folks, only a few days left in the year, so let's gather beneath the mistletoe and pass around a Christmas joint. It's time for your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Swiss legalize heroin but won't decriminalize cannabis. Geneva, Switzerland. The world's most comprehensive legalized heroin program became permanent Sunday with overwhelming approval from Swiss voters who simultaneously rejected the decriminalization of marijuana. The nearly 1,300 selected addicts who have been unhelped by other therapies visit one of the centers twice a day to receive the carefully measured dose of heroin produced by a government-approved laboratory. They keep their paraphernalia in cups labeled with their names and use the equipment and clean needles to inject themselves, 4 at a time, under the supervision of a nurse, and also receive counseling from psychiatrists and social workers. 68% of the 2.26 million Swiss voters casting ballots approved making the heroin program permanent. By contrast, 63.2% of voters voted against the marijuana proposal, which was based on a separate citizens' initiative to decriminalize the consumption of marijuana and growing the plant for personal use. Joe Lang, a Green Party member of parliament from the central city of Zug, said he was disappointed in the failure of the marijuana measure because it means 600,000 people in Switzerland will be treated as criminals because they use cannabis. Lang said, quote, "People have died from alcohol and heroin, but not from cannabis," end quote. The government, which opposed the marijuana proposal, said it feared that liberalizing cannabis could cause problems with neighboring countries. Talk about sending a wrong message to the children. Don't use cannabis or we'll arrest you. But if you get into heroin, we'll give you a nice place to shoot up some free smack. In a strange way, the Swiss voters just said that cannabis use isn't addictive. They had to take action against heroin because those people got addicted and would shoot up in city parks. But apparently, cannabis isn't enough of a problem for the Swiss people to think it needs a harm reduction solution. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for clean needle exchange programs and maintenance heroin programs, and I really don't even mind if the government pays for it. But to accept that treatment of heroin while maintaining a prohibition against cannabis seems insane to me. I bet if you'd legalize the cannabis, you'd end up with less heroin addicts over the long term, too. Bloomberg critic on Marijuana Nation from Bloomberg.com. Here's some holiday cheer. At least one U.S. industry is not only booming, but avoids government intervention like the plague. When these folks need a bailout, they call their lawyers, not their lobbyists. Marijuana Nation, which airs tomorrow on National Geographic Channel at 10 p.m. New York time, is an intriguing look at the U.S. marijuana business, estimated to turn a tidy $65 billion annual profit, despite an often perilous sales environment. Anchored by Lisa Ling, former co-host of The View, this hour-long show presents enough market stats to make an analyst salivate. Marijuana, first used as an intoxicant in China some 5,000 years ago, is now the most widely used illegal substance in the world, according to Ling. About 200 million people use pot in one form or another, and the market is growing steadily, with 2 million Americans projected to try it for the first time this year. California is also benefiting from sales of medical marijuana, which brought an estimated $3 million in tax revenues to Oakland in 2003. Ling dons a helmet and fatigues to join a bus deep inside California's Sequoia National Forest, where she rappels from a helicopter like a special ops warrior. Public land is popular with pot farmers. In 2007, more than 250,000 plants were seized in this forest alone. Yet these efforts seem futile. Law enforcement officials say growers often plant 5 plots, assuming 2 will be seized by police and/or pot pirates, while animals will eat the equivalent of another. That leaves 2 plots that can produce millions in profits. Remember that alcohol prohibition ended not necessarily because there was a recognition of prohibition's failure. That was widely understood, but it was the economic desperation of the Depression that finally nudged Americans to repeal prohibition. We just couldn't afford it. I don't think the drug war will end, but I do think it will shift. As the Mexican border becomes more dangerous from cocaine, heroin, and meth trafficking, and as U.S. cities and states begin to see these drugs as a bigger scourge, I think the attitude will change to reflect that we can't afford to aggressively police marijuana when resources are scarce to fight those other drugs.
Marijuana is an addictive drug which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death. Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind.
If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face to face with the monster of marijuana, he would drop dead from fright.
Reefer Madness.
Your tax dollars working to spread ONDCP lies. Just south of Portland, Oregon, there's a little town called Molalla. Like most rural areas in Oregon, it is politically much more intolerant of cannabis than the liberal confines of Multnomah County. An Oregon NORML member snapped a picture of a billboard she saw while driving on U.S. Highway 99 East. And this is a billboard from the Molalla Coalition Against Drug Crime, which in big red and black letters says,
Marijuana, a gateway drug to meth.
This message is accompanied by a picture of a man smoking a joint on the left and the now infamous Oregonian pictures of the pockmarked female meth addict on the right. Then the message continues by asking people to call the county sheriff's office anonymous tip line. Now, I'm not against community organizations who in good faith try to relieve their neighborhoods of crime. It's just sad that they're trying to reduce the harm from hard drugs by lying about cannabis. Marijuana is not a gateway to meth or any other drug, any more so than coffee, nicotine, alcohol, sugar, or Flintstones chewable vitamins. The gateway theory has been debunked by many independent organizations and even by our own drug-hating government. From the University of Pittsburgh study in 2006, researchers found that adolescents who used marijuana prior to using other drugs, including alcohol and tobacco, were no more likely to develop a substance abuse disorder than other subjects in the study. The Rand Corporation study from 2002? While the gateway theory has enjoyed popular acceptance, scientists have always had their doubts, said lead researcher Andrew Morale, associate director of Rand's Public Safety and Justice Unit. Our study shows that these doubts are justified. And from our government's own Institute of Medicine's 1999 study, there is no conclusive evidence that the drug effects of marijuana are causally linked to the subsequent abuse of other illicit drugs. Patterns in progression of drug use from adolescence to adulthood are strikingly regular. Because it is the most widely used illicit drug, marijuana is predictably the first illicit drug most people encounter. Not surprisingly, most users of other illicit drugs have used marijuana first. In fact, most drug users begin with alcohol and nicotine before marijuana, usually before they are of legal age. In fact, the American Medical Association claims that if there is such a gateway effect, it is alcohol and tobacco that are the gateway. From the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2003, early regular use of tobacco and alcohol emerged as the two factors most consistently associated with later illicit drug use and abuse or dependence. I could keep link farming all the studies from Canada, Australia, Europe, and the World Health Organization that declare the marijuana gateway theory to be bullshit, but you can easily find that for yourself at drugwarfacts.org. My biggest problem with the billboard isn't the lie, it's that you and I paid for it. That's right, that billboard on the outskirts of my hometown, like many probably displayed around your hometown, are funded by grants from the Office of National Drug Control Policy. In 1997, the Drug-Free Communities Act was signed by President Clinton. Grants are given to local community anti-drug organizations like the Molalla Coalition Against Drug Crime. Last year, ONDCP gave out $74 million in grants to 736 of these organizations around the country. Now, I called the contact for the Molalla grant to try to find out how much the billboard cost and the amount of the federal grant, but she wasn't very interested in speaking to me once I told her I was a journalist doing a story on government anti-drug grants. I hadn't even gotten to the point of telling her I was from NORML before she was hanging up. But if we just take a simple average, it's about $100,000 per organization. I also looked up one of the leading, or read expensive, rehab centers in Oregon, Serenity Lane, and found out that a 28-day intensive inpatient drug rehab service costs $11,900. So then, with that average grant of $100,000, the average drug-free community could pay for 8 meth addicts to get drug rehab. The entire $74 million would treat 6,218 meth addicts, or just over 1% of the entire monthly meth-using population of the United States, which is about 529,000 meth addicts, according to government statistics. Or they could just blow it all on a marijuana gateway drug lie on the billboard. Hey, if marijuana use is such a gateway, how come there are 14 million monthly stoners, but only 500,000 monthly tweakers? Looks like about only 1 out of 28 stoners found their way through the gate.
Hello, Chicago!
Barack Obama has been elected the 44th President of the United States. But will he bring us, the cannabis community, the change we can believe in?
It's an issue of doctors prescribing medical marijuana. I think that should be appropriate.
NORML is asking you to take action and help us hold President-elect Obama to his word with our $10,000 pro-cannabis law reform ad contest.
When I was a kid, I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Just make a 30 or 60 second video or flash animation that answers the question, what should President Obama do about pot? You can submit as many entries as you like, and winning videos will be featured on NORML's website and television campaigns.
What I'm not going to be doing is using Justice Department resources to try to circumvent state laws on this issue.
The grand prize is $3,500, so enter early and enter often.
Well, I would not punish doctors if it's prescribed. That may require some changes in federal law.
Contest deadline is January 15th, 2009. Check NORML.org for official contest rules.
The war on drugs has been a utter failure, and I think that we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
President Obama, we couldn't agree more. The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws is the largest grassroots drug law reform organization in America. So every Monday we visit with the activists in drug law reform who are fighting for our freedom. Get motivated to get it regulated. Join us in some political activism today. You can start by visiting NORML.org. Here at the NORML Daily Audio Stash, we're always paying attention to the votes that happen here in America with regard to cannabis and cannabis law reform, but we also like to keep our eyes on what's happening internationally. Oftentimes, the people in Europe have a different view of cannabis and the law than we do, and it's interesting to see how people around the world respond to this issue. Most recently, we've seen that Switzerland has had a vote where they had 2 items on the ballot. One was to legalize heroin maintenance programs for heroin addicts, and the other one was cannabis decriminalization. It was very interesting how these votes turned out, and to get the international perspective on it, I'm joined today by PJ Wasserman, who's a musician and composer in Switzerland, as well as a software developer. His website is schaltkreiswasserman.com. I'll have a link to that up on the stash because it's awfully long and hard to spell, but you can click through that and check out all his music. And PJ, welcome to the show.
Hello, Russ.
Well, this vote I thought was very interesting. This first part was about legalizing the heroin maintenance clinics and all the needle exchange and such that goes on in Switzerland. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about that and why this was an issue that passed in Switzerland? Why are people so supportive of this heroin maintenance program?
Well, about 10 years ago, there has been a quite heavy junkie scene, open junkie scene in big Swiss cities. So you had all these junkies sitting in the parks and shooting up, and needles were lying around, and it was really a big mess. And then under a very progressive Minister of Health, she she introduced some experiments in needle exchange and really changing the approach, not being repressive, but helping people stay healthy with clean needles. And first it was only methadone, and then there were also experiments with heroin given to the junkies from the state. And the results were very good. The scenes in the parks disappeared. The health of the junkies has very much bettered, and many of them have been able to work and maintain themselves. So this has been done the last about 10 years, and it has proven to be very successful. And now it needed a legal base to continue it. And because people have seen that this has been really helpful, there was no big opposition against it. There was only the far right who was against it, because they hold up their goals of complete abstinence. And that wasn't enough, so people in the whole agreed with it, and it was no problem.
It was quite an interesting vote. Came out with 68% of 2.26 million Swiss voters cast their ballots to make this program permanent. They've seen the positive results that you mentioned, PJ. But on the other hand, there was another vote, which was a citizens' initiative to decriminalize consumption of marijuana and growing the plant for personal use. This one failed by 63%. What happened with that vote? Why are the Swiss people so able to accept heroin use but not cannabis use?
Yeah, it's really paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really strange, but it's a completely different situation. You know, a couple of years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, Switzerland was quite easy with cannabis. And it came to the situation that, for instance, in Basel, it's close to where I live, a city of about 200,000 people. There were about 80 cannabis shops selling cannabis. So there were more hemp shops than bakeries at the time. And this led to the situation that there were many young people who just wanted to make fast money dealing with cannabis. And also, you know, half-criminal scenes entered the business openly. And at the time, there were even kidnappings and shootings amongst rivaling gangs of merchants. So the situation got really kind of out of hand. I mean, for everybody who smoked, it was very nice. You could get good quality grass in shops, and so it was these two different things. But in the public perception, it was a situation that was not good.
So is that...
From that, there was a change in politics. It became much more repressive. And at that time also, there was an initiative in Swiss Parliament that tried to legalize. And there was quite heavy pressure from United States and from EU, European Union countries around Switzerland, because they didn't want their citizens to go to Switzerland for shopping. And I know somebody who was in the State Drug Commission at that time, and this politician, he told me that there was open intervention from U.S. Embassy, that U.S. Embassy said very directly, if the Swiss legalized, then Swiss pharmaceutical companies like Novartis and Roche would get big problems in the USA.
Oh, wow.
So that wasn't the only thing, but this was certainly important. And this parliamentary initiative got rejected very narrowly at that time, about 4 years ago. And from that situation, there were a couple of people, politicians on the one side, from leftist and green parties, and also on the other side, there were activists from the hemp scene who had been making quite some money in that open market situation. And they tried to get this people's initiative going. And they also succeeded. I was also working in that. We succeeded in getting the necessary 100,000 signatures to get it into the vote. But then, repression had become quite hard, and a lot of the activist people in the movement got jailed, or they got fined very heavily. So all of a sudden there was no financial support anymore. And these people from the political people from the Social Democratic Party and the Green Party, it wasn't so important to them. I mean, they had it on their agenda, and the Green Party has a very progressive agenda on cannabis, but I noticed again and again that it wasn't a very important point to them. There were other issues that were much more important. Of course, environment is a very important point, but it didn't get enough attention in these parties. And there's also the FDP party, which is a liberal, business-minded party. They are normally very liberal in that sense that they say everybody has to look for himself, and it's not the state's job to tell people what to do with their bodies and their minds. But they were very divided on it. The National Party said yes to the initiative, but the local party chapters, many of them said no. So there wasn't any support, and there was no money, and there was no organization like NORML who had been standing a long time, you know.
Right.
So it was lacking the organizational structure. And it was really strange because in the last weeks before the vote, I haven't seen any posters, you know. Normally when there's a vote, there's lots of posters, but there were no posters at all. I have seen 2 posters against it and not one poster for it.
Yeah, it is tough to get that political backing sometimes, even in Europe, I guess, to try to get people to stand up for what you'd think would be a common sense sort of thing, especially when you're simultaneously legalizing a heroin maintenance program. You'd think they'd want to do some harm reduction on the cannabis side of it. I guess one thing I would wonder is, looking at Swiss culture, Are the Swiss people being kind of fooled like the American people are, in that they're confusing the harms of the prohibition of cannabis with the cannabis itself?
Yes, of course. That's what the right wing always says, you know. They say it's much more THC and it's not a soft drug anymore, it's a hard drug now. And they say it's very bad for the health. And it has long-time bad effects on the psyche, and that would be proven scientifically. So there are all this kind of lies, you know, they're all around.
Yeah.
And I think many of them believe them also.
I think you're right.
And they have the opinion that they can protect young people by repression. And I mean, it's been proven for so long that it doesn't work, but they still keep repeating the same old mantra.
Yeah, well, maybe, what we need to do, PJ, is get a whole bunch of cannabis users to hang out in the park like the heroin users used to do. Maybe they'll set up a government marijuana maintenance program. Who knows?
Yeah. You're right. It's not enough of a problem.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like the heroin issue got to be such a big problem that people couldn't believe the lies anymore. They had to go for harm reduction, whereas with cannabis, it's so light a drug that they don't really see a need for harm reduction. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, and they say, what I always hear is the argument, it's the wrong signal.
Yeah.
That's what they all keep repeating. They think if they decriminalize, then the signal would be everybody must get stoned.
Yeah. Well, what kind of signal are you sending when you can go and get government heroin?
Well, it's not that easy to get government heroin. Not all of the junkies even got it so far.
Oh, okay.
It's no change, but you need a doctor's prescription, and you need to be in a program. So it's not for everybody.
Yeah. Well, it's a fascinating subject, and when I saw that vote come across the headlines, it just kind of made me do a double take to say, wait a minute, that seems kind of strange.
Really strange and weird. But one has also, I must also say that the situation in Switzerland for cannabis users is not that bad. There are about 40,000 arrests each year, and it's mostly young people. So if somebody smokes who is working, he normally doesn't have any problems.
Oh, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, the biggest problem is a couple of years ago they introduced the law concerning driving, and as you also know, these tests are really a bad joke, because if you have smoked 3 days ago and then not anymore, and you get checked in your car, then it says you have used cannabis, so they take away your driving license.
That's a lot of that's happening here in the United States too. We have 9 different states here that have what they call per se DUID laws, which means if you're caught with anything, metabolites in your system, you're impaired whether or not you're impaired or not.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Wow.
And this is very unfair, and there are quite a couple of people who have problems in their professions because if they can't drive, they can't do their business. And this is a very unfair situation, and this is probably the worst thing here. But apart from that, it's mainly a problem for the young people, because they get caught by the police, and this produces a lot of hatred against the state, which I think is a very bad situation, because especially in a democratic society, it shouldn't be that young people get educated to hate the police.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. We've got the same situation here, been going on for 70 years now, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. We'll keep doing what we can to end adult marijuana prohibition and come up with some saner drug policies, not only in the United States, but around the world. And PJ, I want to thank you for giving us the look here from Switzerland. And why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your website again so that they can take a look at that if they want?
Yeah, first, I wanted to say congrats on Obama, and I hope that he will change something here.
Thank you.
Yeah, our website is schaltkreiswassermann.com, written in one word. It's very difficult German, but we decided to keep the name because we had it for so long. And we do some very interesting psychedelic multimedia live act. So please take a look at our website and enjoy the video that's there.
Excellent.
And if you want to invite us for a concert in the USA, we would be very happy to come.
We'll see what we can do about that. Maybe we can get you to Seattle Hemp Fest. That would be a lot of fun.
Hey, that would be fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, PJ Wasserman, who's a musician and composer and software developer in Switzerland. And auf Wiederhören.
Yeah, auf Wiederhören. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are you or is someone you know a marijuana smoker? Have you or is someone in your family been arrested for a marijuana violation? You need to know the truth about pot. NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, is the most comprehensive source of information regarding marijuana and its effects on health, as well as legal issues. NORML even offers a database of lawyers specializing in cannabis in your area. NORML, the nation's largest and most successful marijuana law reform organization, has spent decades gathering the knowledge and science on everything related to cannabis. NORML is the best resource to find out the truth about marijuana, connect with a lawyer in your area, or help find an end to prohibition. Information is available at norml.org, that's NORML.org, or toll free at 888-67-NORML.
Here at the NORML Daily Audio Stash, we work hard to change our nation's marijuana laws through education and discussion. But we also take time to relax and unwind with an eclectic mix of pod-safe music from many independent artists. We look for music that speaks to the growing truth about cannabis, or music that speaks to broader themes of freedom, liberty, social justice, equality, and protest. To find out more about the artists and download the music you hear on this podcast, just log on to stash.norml.org. And if you'd like to get your music heard by the online cannabis community, just send us an email at stash@norml.org.
Welcome back, Stashers. I hope your Thanksgiving was chocked full of turkey, or tofurkey if you're a vegan, or turbacon duckin' if you're aiming for clogged arteries and an early death, and lots of sacraments, let's call them. Oh, who am I kidding? I hope you smoked yourself silly. Now, I promise the Stash will never become a venue through which I will self-promote. It is and will always be a showcase for artists across the country. That being said, after hearing Chief Greenbud's tune on the Stash last Wednesday, it made me realize that I wrote a holiday theme song about 3 years ago called the Christmas Time Blues. It's a silly little song that's somewhat pot-related for a silly EP called Christmas Time, and has sat in the vault that is my computer's hard drive ever since I wrote it. And since it's Monday and Monday equals Blues Day, I thought I'd play the song for you. It's nowhere near the caliber of Mr. Greenbud or any of the other music I featured here, but it's cute and funny, and I think it will start off the holiday season, whatever that may be for you, nicely. You can find an MP3 to download, and you can check out my MySpace page and my website and all that sort of stuff on our blog at stash.normal.org. Now, enough with the self-promotion. Here is me, Josh Belleville, with the Christmas Time Blues.
We won't be doing self-promotion, so here's a song written by myself. Now that's irony, Josh. Hey, if we're jamming, let me grab my bass and back you up a little bit.
Oh, Santa Claus, don't you like me anymore? 'Cause I got no presents from you. You pass by my door, you don't like me no more. And I got the Christmas time blues. My baby done left me, my dog's put to sleep. It looks like I got nothing to lose. No presents, no people, no man's best friend. Oh, I got the Christmas time blues. All I wanted was a big toy horsey, some candy in my stocking, just a bed, a train set, maybe a pony, and a big old bag of weed if you can spare it. Oh, Santa Claus, don't you like me anymore? 'Cause I got no presents from you. By my door, you don't like me no more. And I got the Christmas time blues. Play it, Sam. Oh, do those chords. That's all you know, you're just a rhythm player, aren't you? Sorry, I didn't mean to bring that up. It's bad. You'll learn one of these days. This takes time. Some candy in my stocking, just a bed, a train set, maybe a pony, and a big old bagger that can drive you can spell it, man. Oh, Santa Claus, don't you like me anymore? 'Cause I got no presents from you. Pass by my door, you don't like me no more. And I got the Christmas time blues. And I got the Christmas time blues. And I got the Christmas time blues.
If I were to tell you that in America, right now, over 1 million children sell marijuana, what would you think? Would you think that any public policy that creates over 1 million teenage marijuana dealers needs to be re-examined and possibly amended? You would not be alone. The members of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, aka NORML, have been working since 1970 to reform marijuana laws such that responsible adults, not children, sell and use marijuana. isn't it high time to reform America's misguided marijuana laws? This is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML in Washington, D.C. Only concerned citizens can effectively end the federal government's nearly 70-year-old prohibition on responsible adult marijuana sales and use. Want to know more about how you can help? Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's popular and informative webpage at NORML, NORML.org.
Here at the Normal Daily Audio Stash, we like to help people out and their attempts to change the law at both the state and national and even the local level. But one place where sometimes people don't realize they can change the laws and the rules and regulations is at their own college or university. And we have lots of NORML chapters out there that are involved at the college and university level, and one of the greatest ones out there is at the University of Central Florida. Joining us today to talk about that is the president of UCF NORML, Brendan Rivard. Brendan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You guys are doing something that has been tried at a couple of other chapters here, and this is a vote in your student, is it your student senate? Is that what it is?
It's a referendum election, basically, of the whole student body.
And this is for equalization of alcohol and marijuana penalties. Why don't you explain a little bit what that means?
Yeah, basically, the disparity between alcohol and marijuana penalties is well known. Even on our campus, we don't have any guidelines for sanctioning, so there tends to be a disparity between the two, and not only just between the two, but within the two as well. So we had a referendum in February that passed with 57%, and then we composed a task force that drafted a policy, and the task force had student leaders, just at-large students, and administration on it. And the draft was voted on by the task force, passed, and now we are proposing it to the Golden Rule Committee, which is the committee that oversees all basically all policy regarding the UCF student body constitution, known as the Golden Rule.
So is the problem then that on campus, if you're busted with alcohol, you get punished worse than if you're busted with marijuana, or is it the opposite?
It is the opposite. Alcohol, you get punished less than with marijuana, which, as we all know, implicitly drives students to drink, which doesn't make any sense considering marijuana is safer than alcohol.
I see. So the idea here is to have the students only be punished as badly for marijuana as they would be punished badly for alcohol, so that you're not kind of incentivizing the use of alcohol. Is that the idea?
Pretty much, that's the premise.
Okay. So how big of a school are we talking about here at UCF, and what will be the practical effect if you manage to get this passed?
I believe we are actually the fifth largest school in the country. We have just over 50,000 enrolled at our campus, and I think it sends a huge message that, not only the people who turned out, in the largest amounts to vote for president this year, are they saying that we need to change direction of the country, but we need to change our laws, and we need to change the way we look at drug policy, and, stop having illogical laws around marijuana.
Okay. What is the penalty that we're trying to change? What is the current penalty for marijuana on campus there at UCF?
Well, there are no specific guidelines, but typically from talking with students who have been sanctioned, they would receive anywhere from 2 semesters probation to 4 semesters probation, and 4 semesters probation is half your college career. You're on, academic probation.
Yeah, that's got to make it kind of tough as far as, does it make it harder for your student loans or getting any sort of grants or honors or anything when you're on probation like that?
Well, what it does really is you're not allowed to hold leadership positions in organizations, and they put a hold on your account. So whenever you need to register for classes, you have to go and request that the hold be lifted every time.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so basically it impedes, the two things that would, essentially help someone get out of a drug problem if they had one, which is, getting involved and enrolling in classes.
Yeah. But you're telling me the university doesn't actually have a written policy on marijuana like this? It's all kind of ad hoc? Is that what's happening?
That is what is happening.
But they do have...
And it creates a, an overall lack of, a lack of, steady guidelines.
Like fairness and consistency when you're dealing with that.
There's no consistency in sanctioning.
Okay. Now, but they do have written guidelines for alcohol, and I guess even if you're talking underage drinking there at the college, is that true?
No, they do not have written guidelines for alcohol or marijuana. They don't have guidelines for any substance.
Okay,
and,
so
This even helps, students who get sanctioned for alcohol.
Yeah,
they can't be sanctioned more than they might have been.
Yeah. I was going to say, if they've got no policies, written whatsoever, and they're just relying on the administrators to enforce, these policies, making them up as they go, then there's definitely going to be kind of a prejudice against marijuana users, I'd imagine.
Oh, definitely. The social stigma surrounding marijuana, by itself would, allow one to assume that.
Yeah, I think so. Now, I know that you're working along with the SAFER organization, Mason Tavert, out there in Denver, and I know that how they got kind of started here was that at the University of Colorado, there's some pretty high-profile binge drinking deaths there on campus. Does Central Florida have that same sort of problem with binge drinking?
Well, we do. I know one of our biggest concerns is with our new on-campus stadium is, drinking in large amounts right before you go into the game, which can often lead to dehydration and all those things. And we've also had a few student deaths due to drunk driving, and it's really a sad sight to see, because one has to wonder whether, if they were allowed to make the safer choice, would they still be around? Would they still be alive if they, weren't driven down to drink, instead of with the way the current laws are.
Yeah. Does the campus or the university in any way engage in any sort of student drug testing?
I do not believe so.
Okay. That's just another area where, sometimes, people are incentivized to try other drugs because of how the marijuana stays in your system so much longer than the other drugs. And of course, not a lot of people are testing for alcohol either. So that's just another thing we're trying to fight here at NORML. Well, Brendan, if anyone's there in Central Florida and needs to get in touch with you or wants more information on this, I guess you're having the vote tomorrow. Okay. Is there anything people can do about that to help you guys with that vote?
I'm sorry, repeat.
I was just saying, if people there in Central Florida want to help you out, the vote is tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So what can people do to help out or get in touch with NORML UCF?
I mean, they can email me at president@normalucf.com. Or go to normalucf.com, email any of our officers, come around to our table on campus, donate, anything they can do to help us, all help is good help.
All right. Well, check out the web then at normalucf.com. And Brendan Rivard is the president of NORML UCF, and thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with another one of our cannabis quotes, this one from the man himself, Tommy Chong, from the recent Cheech and Chong Roasted on the TBS cable show. Check your listings for that. Where he said, quote, "The first night I met Cheech, he had some Primo, Michoacan weed. After we smoked, he said everything I said was funny, and I thought everything he said was funny, and then we thought everything the dog said was funny, and that's how this whole thing started." End quote. Well, Cheech and Chong, we're glad you're back together. They're still out on tour. Check the internet for the listings of when and where, but they just came through Oregon a few days ago. Fortunately, I couldn't be there, but maybe sometime on the tour I'll get out to see them. Hey, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us here for the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and interviews you can use. Also, check out our Pot Quiz Stash polls now on the blog at stash.norml.org. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.